Angus Young, how you doing?
Good, Becko.
The Offspring.
How's it going, Becko?
Dave Grohl, how you going, mate?
Good, man.
Pete, it's been a long time coming.
Oh, Becko, hasn't it indeed?
We go inside the dressing room, speak to the biggest names in music,
Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones.
and crack open their esky.
That's exactly how I imagine you, by the way, sitting opposite me with a vodka and orange.
You're a discerning chap. This is The Rider.
Hey, it's Becko. Welcome back to The Rider, and a big thank you to Jeff Martin from the Tea Party joining me last week. An absolute legend these days, very much an Australian, but if you're from Canada, of course, you are claiming him as your own, and his album is out now. Now, we're all set for Splendour in the Grass coming up this weekend, having camped there a couple of times, and I will say, one time was the wettest Splendour on record. My two-man tent was underwater by Friday. I don't think I'll ever do that again, but it's going to be a real fun one coming up. We've got Lizzo headlining on the Friday. Mumford & Sons is going to be the big one on the weekend. Yeah, and I'll be keeping my fingers crossed for you because you do not want a muddy Splendour, although it is kind of half the fun, isn't it? In the next couple of weeks, a big one. I have got an email saying I managed to jag one of the biggest artists of the 90s, someone who really shaped the sound of that entire decade and beyond. Don't want to blow it who it is, but that is still to come on The Rider.
This is The Rider.
But this week, a mate of mine, someone who has been through the ringer, someone who grew up in front of the world, and now he's got a great new album out called Miracles, Nathan Cavaleri.
When Nathan was at his peak, everybody knew who Nathan Cavaleri was.
Very cool, Mr. Cavaleri. Very cool.
As far as being a blues guitar player goes, he's just got a lot of feel. Who knows, it could be the next Eric Clapton or whatever, He's incredible.
He's been through the ringer early in life. He went through life and death. He's been through fame. He's been through less fame.
You've got an endorsement deal?
Yeah.
You're 12 years old?
He really became kind of our poster child. He grew up before our very eyes.
And if you saw ABC's Australian Story, you'll know the story of Nathan Cavaleri. Now, I first met him when he was part of this band, Nat Cole and the Kings. That was the song Kicking and Screaming. His new album, Miracles, is out now. And this is the first single, Cool Changes. I'm loving this one, Carencia. And then the final track on this album is a cover of a Billie Eilish track, and you'll know it when you hear this riff. He ended up doing it as an instrumental. We'll find out why when we chat to Nathan Cavaleri. And here he is on the Zoom screen in front of me. G'day, Nathan. How are you?
Mate.
How are you, mate? You been well?
I'm great. Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, it's been ages. It's so good to see your face, mate. You're down in Canberra, right?
I'm in Canberra. It's freezing cold.
What are you doing?
It's so weird. So I'm doing media and comms.
How's the podcast going?
Mate, it's going really well. I had a bit of a break because last year I was work was just hectic. We had an election. I was working on that. And there was lots going on, and I just thought I'll come back to that once everything settles down. I thought, well, I'll start it up now. That's the right time. And also, I've been trying to get you on it because we've been waiting for the right time as well.
I know. And yeah, well, it's a perfect time for it.
Congratulations on the album. It is incredible.
Oh, thanks, mate. You like it?
I really like it. Just from the opening track, it's got the psychedelic thing. It's not trying to be something it's not. There's plenty of guitar, but at the same time, it's just polished. It sort of reminds me of some of the great albums I've heard over the years where they've had just $1 million producers and all that sort of thing. How did you make that sound?
You know what to tell me. That's produced and mixed myself. Having said that, I did have Andrew Sheps overseeing the mix process, and he is the one that has carved out those $1 million sounds over the years with Chili Peppers and Adele and Kaleo and stuff like that. So that was, as much as what I've been mixing for a long time, he was an amazing anchor, and I learned a lot throughout that process, just sending my mixes off to him, and then he'd give me feedback and all those little things made made the album what it is for sure.
Yeah, and worth it. So yeah, the opening track, which if people have caught it on Spotify, is called Carencia. Is that right?
Carencia, nice.
Carencia.
Yep.
All the way through to the Billie Eilish cover as well. Track 12. That was a surprise. I love that track.
Yeah. Well, I how did I stumble? I mean, Billie Eilish. I love the music that she comes out with, but that when the party's over, it just did something to me, and I was just noodling around with it on the guitar and in a kind of psychedelic country blues surfy sort of way, and I posted it on Instagram, and a whole heap of people DM'd me, said, "You got to record that. That's awesome." And I'm like, I don't know, it's a bit weird. I tried to sing it, and I'm like, well, that's even weirder, me singing it. And so I left it as an instrumental and turned it into this sort of surfy Tex-Mex thing. So
that's great. Because the dilemma is you want to write some lyrics to it, or you want to sing the song as it is as well. And it must have been nice to get that feedback on Twitch, because you were recording the album as you went quite publicly.
Yes. Yeah. So I spent about a year and a half making this album, and even the writing process, a good part of that I did live on Twitch. And, I've been on Twitch now for a bit over 3 years. I still love it. It's an incredible community. But it is another thing to, open yourself up for viewers to see the creative process of making an album, because at times you're just so open and you're going for notes and trying all these things that they don't always pan out. They often don't pan out. But it was an experiment that I felt like really paid off, because Twitch, having that instant feedback, really helped me to stay on track. And because they over time know me so well, they would call it if I was drifting, or I was getting a little swept up in insecurities. They go, "Nope, you're holding back. That's not the you." I'm like, all right. But occasionally you get an untactful comment, and you have to be okay with that. And if you're not, then it just kind of shows you about the limiting beliefs that you have within yourself. So I'd kind of twist that around and see that as an opportunity to go to work on myself.
Well, because the thing is, back in the old days, you put an album out and it's done and it's on the shelves. You get brutal feedback from the reviewers, but now you can get that honest feedback and you can act on it long before the song's even finished. And I love that idea.
Yeah. And I mean, the tricky part is you've got to make sure that you are still staying anchored to your own truth. So you can get quite distracted by people's, if you're, for a long time, somebody would make a comment about my song. I'm not really sure about this part or that part, and I wouldn't be able to forget it. Even if I loved it, that would just affect everything for me. So that was the thing I was probably mostly concerned about. Would people's opinions actually disconnect me from my own desires and my own heart? And so I had to set some intentions throughout it. And I think it was also kind of a cool test as well, is if I really, I'd take that information and pair it up with what was sitting inside me. That process I used to miss. I never used to do that. I used to just gobble up the information and that's it. But if you pair it up with what, your heart is kind of wanting, if it resonates, then it's constructive feedback. And, but if it doesn't resonate, then you gotta throw it out and just keep doing what you're doing.
My first dealings with you, was Nat Cole and the Kings. When
Nat Cole and the Kings,
we met. This is probably not that long ago, really, when you think about it, in the scheme of things. This is sort of 2014 or 2013, maybe. And it was at the Gaelic Club, and I saw you guys in action, and you were leaving the blues behind with that. That was real pretty. That was rocky.
Yeah, pretty heavy blues rock, and and I had the drummer Screaming Jets, and it was a loud band, and there was a lot of energy, but yeah, we sort of parted ways because creatively I felt like we were kind of going off on different paths, but it also I had a lot of mental health challenges there that ended up getting the better of me. So it's funny how the world works out, because I felt like I needed to go through that from an artistic point of view to find myself again. I probably only found a certain part of myself in Nat Cole and the Kings, and that's all it was ever going to be. It wasn't until actually Ash Gromwalt was the one who questioned me and said, "Why are you in a band and not using your own name?" He said, "You spent, like people spend their whole lives trying to build up the credibility that you have around your own name, and it's like you're starting again. Like, do you really want to start again?" And he gave me that opinion just at the right time that made me go, I think I really need to relook at things.
Yeah. Did that mean you were sort of not being yourself in a way? Were you trying to run away from the 10-year-old Nathan Cavaleri?
Yeah, I was. Well, Cole Hatchman, he was a real sort of wave your own freak flag type of guy, So he actually got me back to feeling proud about what I had achieved as a kid, and it was kind of like stuff all the other the naysayers and the haters. You just be you, but the means in which Nat Cole and the Kings was set up, I could only be sort of a part of me, not all of me. And when you're in a band, you kind of got to write for the band as well and record for the band, and you got to consider all those elements. Cole as a drummer has a certain style. Kenny as a bass player had a certain style. So I could only go so far with that creatively, But you are right. The Nat Cole and the Kings and what I did beforehand, the idea of being in a band was because I didn't want to use my name because I was embarrassed by it. So, but enough artists that I look up to, Ash being one, Diesel, Rusty from Electric Mary, lots of different walks of life. Lindsay, Friends of Rom, they made me rethink my name and my achievements, accomplishments, I should say.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad I did.
What makes me feel guilty though, because I knew at the time and I didn't realize the stuff you were going through. And did you have people coming up to you, friends that you don't sort of catch up all the time, but people who you know and say, "Oh my God, I had no idea you're going through that until, we saw the video blogs and Australian Story and all that sort of thing."
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't have known because I don't think I was particularly open, and those conversations kind of didn't flow to that place. But to be completely honest, when we caught up for a beer or anything like that, I'd be having an anxiety attack an hour beforehand, because I had kind of kept shutting down parts of my life where there was fear so much to the point where my world just became really, really small. That's how I learned that you can't outrun it. You think that fear or anxiety is, to do with this X situation. But let's just say you move away from X, you go to Y. For me, it followed me, and then it followed me over here and it followed me over there. And that's when I was like, oh, this has got nothing to do with what's actually happening in the world and these situations. This has got something to do with what's happening in me, which was kind of a liberating thing because that puts me back in the driver's seat. But as far as friends are concerned, I had a lot of resentment towards my really close friends for a long time because I had been there for them, and I was pretty vocal amongst my mates about it. And other than one, which was Kenny, and somebody who I didn't expect, nobody checked in. Like, you can definitely understand how a mate or somebody can just kind of get lost. And then when I confronted some of them about it, some would say, dude, I was like so lost in my own world, I didn't even realize yet. And others, they were just too self-centered to give a shit, to be honest. So it's definitely a way that you can find out who your real friends are, that they're going to be there and how connected they are as well. So,
Yeah, well, you definitely know that when you can't offer your friends what you used to offer before, you know, whether that's going through a career change or whether it's going through, you know, personal, health problems or whatever. You always find out very quickly who your real mates are. And
Totally. Absolutely.
And one person who I know you've been in contact before has also come back and used his real name for the first time is Ben Gillies, because he only recently came out and did music under the Ben Gillies name, and I think it was for similar reasons. He didn't want to be known as, you know, that guy from Silverchair. So I know you've been chatting as well.
Yeah. We've been connected for a while. Actually, I mean, the first time I met Ben was actually side stage at a festival that Silverchair and I was playing back in 1994
Wow.
in Zurich. We were watching Page and Plant together. And then I also met him at a gig, at their own gig on Santa Monica at the pier. They were doing a freebie gig, and that's the first time I ever saw a mosh pit in real life. And then we came together briefly for a gig for the Starlight Foundation, and then later when he just after Australian Story, he reached out and he's slowly becoming a good mate. And but I often think about the Silverchair boys, particularly Daniel as well. Watching some of the interviews that he has been on and some of the things he has admitted. I wonder if there's definitely some similarities about how the past sits in his head, and I can't say that when you kick ass, particularly when you're young, here in Australia, that it's all that celebrated. Like, it's a strange thing. You've got these people out there that are really behind you, and then you get so much hate at the same time. It's a bizarre thing.
It's and particularly when you're young. I mean, you heard the stories about Daniel going back to high school after Frog Stomp, and they were bullied and it was relentless. Yeah. And I'm sure you had the same thing going back to school after you became a child star.
Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's, and the thing is with high school, like I carried a belief in me for a long time that said that people at school hated me. And because of that, those problems that I had. But then when Australian Story was released, I had a guy reach out who was 3 years above me at school, and he was like the bomb footy player, right? And I went to St. Greg. So they were pretty much about the footy. Great school on the overall. Maris Brothers Boys School. And I thought it was because I was a musician that I got that. He confessed that he got it as well because he was the best football player. Now, that says it's got nothing to do with anything that you do. It's about just being good and standing out. That kind of, now I can kind of repackage up those past events in a different way. And wow, if I knew that back then, that would have changed so much about the music that I played, and that it really wasn't personal.
No, and you don't realize at the time because kids are really brutal. And you've got
assholes.
Yeah, but you've now got kids that age.
I do. They're little assholes too. No, I'm joking. They're beautiful.
But you got to be, I guess, protective, knowing the problems you went through around that age. So you got two boys. Is it 8 and 5 now? And
they. I'm curious. I am very curious as to what's going to happen when they get to that age of social media and technology. And it's, for me, I know I sound a bit old here, but it feels a little scary. It feels a little scary and overwhelming, the idea that during the most emotionally turbulent time that you can be on, or the norm is to be on social media. That to me makes no sense whatsoever. I am actually for social media. I like it in context and in certain situations, but the idea of a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, like if I had social media back then, if that was a thing with all the problems I went through, that it would have felt like that more than just this part of the world being St. Greg's was against me. It would have felt like the whole world was against me, you know? And it's not, social media is by all means not a accurate reflection of reality at all.
No.
But
no.
Tell a teenager that.
Yeah, well, and you go through and you scroll and go through all the negativity and all the things you tagged in and whatever. When we were kids, the worst that could happen was, people would write things on your locker or leave a note or,
and it was localized.
Yeah,
it was localized
that's right.
to that situation. It doesn't spread like it does now. So, but I think every generation has had their thing though. Yeah, I think my parents, if you ask my parents, it was just a different thing back then that they were worried about. So, yeah.
Tell you what, your dad was a good-looking rooster back in the day.
with his Tom Selleck moustache.
That moustache.
People used to get him confused with Yanni. I don't know if you remember Yanni back in the day.
Yes, yeah. And actually, funny thing is, I saw that likeness, because the moustache, it's iconic.
Yeah,
and,
he used to get mobbed in America. He'd get mobbed by he was Yanni, and can you sign this? Can you sign this? And after a while, he gave up trying to convince people he wasn't Yanni, so he just used to sign everything.
Well, it's just easier, isn't it? Bloody yeah. But the ultimate supportive dad, like he wasn't like pushy in from what you told me, like
no.
We've all seen those parents who push their kids out and they want them to make $1 million or whatever. He was, I think, trying to nurture this skill you had, but it was also at the same time when you were sick, he knew the great distraction it was as well of playing a guitar.
Yeah, I mean, he, like Dad, that Italian way, hard work ethic, bricklayer, things were hard. There was routine, there was discipline, but there was celebration, there was love, and there was always a good conversation. When things got really tough, then he'd kind of see it and go, all right, we need to have a discussion. I just want to make sure that Nathan wants to do this, truly wants to do this. And so they'd sit me down and we'd have that conversation. And I'd always come back to, no, I really, really, really want this. I mean, if he left it up to me to discipline myself to practice, no, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. You just, you're a kid, you just lose the interest. This is boring. I'm going to go play Game Boy.
Aren't you glad, when you look back now as well and not even knowing about the health problems that were about to come around the corner,
Yeah.
It was just, it must have been a great distraction as being a kid.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think I didn't know what I was fighting for when I was being treated for leukemia. So playing music, the guitar was about expression. It gave me an opportunity to sort of digest emotions, and then also, as you say, like something to look forward to, that performance at the end of the week, or that tour, and so it really fired me up, which I didn't probably realize that it did that to me until I dealt with mental health issues later, like the power of purpose. What you would do. I remember there was somebody was quoting referencing a study on rats where rats hate cat waft, and so they would put this cat waft and the rats would run away from the cat waft, right? The smell.
Wow.
But if you put cheese on the other side of the cat waft, the rats will run straight through the cat waft to the cheese. And that was to demonstrate the power of purpose and desire, what you would do when you really want something, So, yeah.
Got to be proud. Yeah, there were things I forgot, because I was very much just a kid watching TV growing up and seeing this kid who had such a skill, and I forgot about bloody Baywatch and things like that. I mean, we all remember Hey Hey Saturday, and we remember BB King.
I don't even think that came here in Australia.
Well, that might be why. Jeez.
Fortunately.
We're gonna have to find that video though. I've never seen it, but
no, you don't.
How did that given to you? Like, how did they approach you for that?
You know what? I have no idea. I don't know how Baywatch happened at all. And I didn't even have a clue during that time. Like, it was just such a headspin for me. Like, David Hasselhoff, like, putting his hand on my shoulder as I cry, that my guardian is dying on the hospital bed, but I know where the money is that Mike Preston needs to get to. And I'd look up at David Hasselhoff trying to, have tears in my eyes because it's a sad scene. And I'm just laughing on the inside going, what the fuck is happening? What is this? You're David Hasselhoff. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? This makes no sense.
It's surreal. It's just nuts. Was it your teenage years when things just kind of, you went back to being a normal kid, but you weren't? People sort of still saw you as the 10-year-old on TV?
I'd probably say, around 15, 16, when things got awkward. And that awkwardness probably continued until about 19, 20. And then that's when I met Cole and I kind of came back out of my shell again. Probably oversteered, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. But
things are just pushing boundaries and face planning occasionally until, definitely face planning later. So
I found it very interesting, actually, that the latest album you did pretty much all the time on Twitch. And I sort of think about how you grew up in front of everyone pretty much, right around the world, not just here. And then this particular album, you recorded that in front of thousands, millions of people as well, completely in a bubble. I thought that was a big step for you.
Interesting parallel.
Yeah.
No, and I'm glad I did it. I'd do it again too. Yeah, I kind of eventually felt at home. It's a pretty special platform. People are not going to pay attention and be there if they're not truly interested, because it's long form. It's not like clicking a like on a 5-second post. These streams, like I did a 13-hour stream the other day.
Wow. And that is true. That these are the committed fans. And it's the same with, God, putting out a podcast that's an hour long is a commitment, and so that they're true fans. It's so true. But also, you're on a platform that's traditionally gaming as well. So it's great to see some musicians in there taking advantage of that.
Yeah. That they've kind of been branching out for the last 3-4 years now. I mean, I'm predicting that it'll just be, a go-to streaming platform for whatever you want to do. You want to follow somebody in their life, you just go to their Twitch channel. So, I mean, I take it on the road with me so people can experience on and off stage via Twitch. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. So, I want to go back to the BB King era, by the way, and you were on tour with him for, a couple of months, I think, from memory, and
it was about 5-6 weeks around America, yeah.
And that's a big deal for you because you were a great, promising little guitar player, and this guy is the legend. Is the legend of blues, and to hang out with him and have the opportunity to be a fly on the wall as well, watch him work would have been just priceless.
Well, it was the first time I saw blues on a big stage. Every blues musician I had played beforehand was either a small festival or in nightclubs, blues clubs. So to see blues in front of 10 to 15,000 people, it was a completely different experience. The power of that guy and the show, and it's no wonder that he's the king of blues. Like, it's I felt like it kind of, I was flattered that he had me on the road, but as soon as he quoted me the future of blues, that kind of did something to me a little later in life that I felt, it ended up a little bit of pressure because I wanted to, what I wanted to say and do went beyond the blues. But then I felt in order to do that, I may be letting him and the traditional sort of blues community down for stepping outside of that. But that's what this album, I had to challenge that as well. I mean, he did say to be me, as in just be authentic, but I just didn't want to look back on my life and see that I had created a whole heap of, tunes that weren't my truth, that would suck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the pressure involved on your shoulders, even, I got reminded with seeing that video of Jimmy Barnes saying the same thing. You're going to be the next Eric Clapton, and that's lovely and wonderful, but God's a lot of pressure on a young kid.
Yeah. I'm glad that, see, like back then I didn't really feel that pressure. It was just like, oh yeah, cool. Wow. Like I was so green and present that it was like a latency. The pressure was later. Like even the relationship that I had with my past in my 20s was like little Nathan put pressure on me because I'd look at my life and go, it's nothing like what it was back then. And it felt like he had kicked my ass, that I'd fallen down from this mountain and how could I compete with that? And so, but I kind of reframed it differently when I started to challenge those beliefs so that it became a source of inspiration. It's my relationship with the past. It's a tricky thing.
How did your dad help you in those awkward times? Because he was obviously there, at the very, very young and, aspirational times, but he would have been just as proud of you going through life, reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with him, he gave me a lot of space, the space that I needed to just find myself with the right amount of reassurance and love along the way when I needed it. Mum, I think, they say that sort of parents, your parents kind of will chime in at different phases of your life. Sometimes you may need your dad, sometimes you may need your mum or whatever your family setup is. And it was really true for me. There were phases in my life where it was dad, like that's, and then there were other phases like when I went through all the mental health challenges, that was mum's time as well, because she knew about that stuff. She had experience with it. It was the right type of energy and support that I needed. And so I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky with the parents that I have. Yeah, I'd choose them.
Yeah,
if I had a choice.
I'm just so proud of the music in this album. What were you listening to when you wrote this particular one?
Yeah, I was listening to lots of different, music. Like, a lot of the influences are pretty subconscious. Occasionally there may be a conscious, reference. Like I was listening to a lot of Lana Del Rey at the time, and but then I was also listening to Grizzly Bear, but then David Bowie and Ry Cooder and T-Rex and George Harrison and Andy Shauf, and like there's so many different things. Like, but I reckon if you kind of got rid of, that pigeonhole of style, you'd probably find, and you thought of music as feelings, you'd probably find a definite theme throughout that whole album of just feelings and where I was in my life at the time when I created it.
Yeah,
and for me, that space it's about leaping. If Demons, the previous album, was about rediscovering myself and learning, then this album was about, now it's time to leap. Now it's action. Now it's leaning in, trusting yourself, having faith.
So after Nat Cole and the Kings and before your solo albums, there was a bit of a gap there, and I know you had to sort out your own problems, which we did know about, but privately you had to spend time and figure everything out. Were you doing a lot of songwriting through that period? Was that something that you did? That's
something that never left me, and I felt like, I think it was a really important phase to go through creatively, because I wasn't intending on getting back to music, because I didn't believe that I was capable of touring and, being out there. Mentally, I was just too unstable. So that meant that when I was creating, it was literally catharsis. It wasn't about whether radio was going to spin it or whether people were going to like it or not. It was just a way for me to to express myself emotionally, which is exactly what it was like when I was a kid. So kind of full circle in different ways, really.
And do you go back and look through your songbooks and do you ever dig things out and go, you know what, that could be a song I could write now, I could work on?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a certain expiry date. You know, I'm not brave enough to go and look at my tapes from my early 20s.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
But having said that, on this album, there's a song called Dry Ice, and I actually wrote that for Nat Cole and the Kings in 2012. And we hadn't gone back in the studio, and then we broke up. And it was just a song that just kept coming back to me, you know, where I was like, you know, I do like it. I still really like it. And so I ended up putting it on this album. Glad I did too. It's a banger.
Are there any songs that you'd love to cover? Because obviously you got the cover on the album here, but are there any songs you haven't quite had the confidence to go there, but you think one day I reckon I can give that one a crack?
Well, I will let you in on a secret is like covers have never really been my thing, but I had this huge surge of inspiration where I was like, you know what? I want to take like songs that had an impact on me, you know, particularly in the 90s, mid 90s, and do versions of them. And I actually, I won't say what songs, but I actually did a couple versions of various mid 90s massive rock songs, biggest rock songs at the time, early to mid 90s, and in really, really interesting, with really interesting arrangements. And I was going to put one of those songs on this album, but it didn't belong. It didn't belong with the rest of them. But I'm keen. I think that's going to be my next project. Is I'd love to do at least just an EP of really creative takes on some of those songs that influenced me as a teenager, and it'll be fun. It'll be a fun tongue-in-cheek EP.
It sounds good. No, it sounds great. I mean, it's not Spaghetti Incident by Guns N' Roses.
Man, that album cops so much, doesn't it?
But I kind of just quietly, I didn't mind it, but everyone else was
same.
So
Yeah.
Maybe it was
when
just
anybody bagged it out, I'm like, yeah, that album. But it's like, man, I've actually played that quite a lot. I felt the same thing about One Hot Minute.
Yeah, no, I always love that too.
I love that. Yeah. And so many people go, oh, that's the worst Chili Peppers album out. And I'm like, that's actually one of my favorites.
Yeah. But sometimes, you know, reviewers, I don't know how to put it, but they want to look cool and they want to be critical, and that's what they do. That's their job. When you can disagree with them. But I mean, there are certain songs you can't touch. You know that. I mean, there are certain, you know, Midnight Oil songs that are tough to
Stairway
cover.
to Heaven.
And it's Stairway to Heaven. Exactly right. You know?
Yeah, you can't. No, I think. Yeah, no. There's just songs that you can't touch. Like I find that's why I also find it difficult to get my head around the idea of doing a version of a Dire Straits song. You would think, given the impact that Dire Straits had on me and Martin Knopfler, that would make sense that I do a version of a Dire Straits song. But each time I do, I'm like, it's either ends up a B grade version of it, or it feels a bit disrespectful. I don't know. I just can't. I mean, one day I'd love, like I really would love to do a version of a Dire Straits song. I just can't work out how to do it yet.
I think you'll wait till the right time. But I understand the impact he had on your life, and you know, I saw it as a kid with your video, you know, and it must have been incredible meeting him. Did you actually get that guitar in the end? Did he promise you a guitar and an amp, I think, from memory?
Yeah. Check it out.
Oh, it's over there. Oh, my God. There it is.
Here it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
And that's his famous guitar.
And that was in his collection. Like I didn't realize that it wasn't from the Fernandez factory. It actually was in his collection. I didn't realize that until much later.
That makes it even more special.
It does. Yeah.
Is that a guitar you go back to regularly?
Here and there, yeah. I've only just started getting back into playing Strat type guitars recently. So I've been in sort of Telecaster and 335 mode for a long time now. So yeah, but it takes me back straight away as soon as I pick it up.
Well, Nathan, thanks so much for your time. And it's about time we sat down and had a chat like this. And
Oh yeah.
you know, and I'm glad that we've caught up regularly, and every couple of months, we'll make contact and say hey. And I've always appreciated that.
I love that.
And I look forward to seeing you down here. Your tour starts on the 7th, and that carries all the way through to the end of the year, pretty much. So
yeah, that's it, all the way around the country. And for those Western Australians that are a bit shitty that there's only one Western Australia gig on the tour, that's because we toured WA for 3 weeks already. So
okay, so you got plenty of Nathan Cavaleri already. Miracles is out now, and you got to check it out. I think from straight away track 1, it's special. So I'm bloody happy for you, mate. And
thanks, mate.
All the best. Thank you for your time with me.
Awesome.
And we'll catch up soon.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime. Take care, mate.
Always a great chat, Nathan Cavaleri. Check out his new album, Miracles. It is out now, and his tour continues right across the country. And as you heard him say, everywhere except for WA because you've just seen him. But check out his dates on his website. Next week, I just don't want to blow it. I don't want to tell you who it is, but next week, a bloke with a million stories. He was one of the biggest pop stars in the world. He had 2 consecutive US number 1s and was quite possibly the last person to speak to Elvis Presley. This mystery person next week on The Rider.